welcome everyone to the Create the Life You Want podcast. Today I am joined by Zack Vosecky. Zack has an interesting journey. He looked at about 30 different franchise opportunities before he settled on one. So we're going to hear a little bit about what that due diligence process looked like. He also had a surprise change to his life circumstances that have led him to leave what he was going to do on the business side. So it'll give us a chance to evaluate a transaction maybe that didn't go as well as Zack had hoped. So Zack, thanks for taking the time to join us on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeremy.
Well, Zack, why don't you just give us a little bit of background of what you were doing before you became a business owner, and when did you decide that that was something you wanted to do? Was it always in the back of your mind, or was there some pivot point for you where this idea came up?
It's always been a dream of mine and my wife's. And so we actually started dating and met at a Longhorn Steakhouse that we were both managing about 10 to 12 years ago. And so most of our background was in the restaurant industry, where we started working as servers, worked our way up to management. And then after a while, realizing that the restaurant industry, you do miss a lot of time with family on the weekends, and parents getting older and eventually wanting to start a family, we both started looking outside of that restaurant industry, something that was more conducive to hours working during the week instead of the weekends. And so we got out of the restaurant industry and went into sales, and were very successful into that. So I started selling security with ADT to commercial companies doing their security system. My wife got a job in the alcohol distributing business, so she now distributes alcohol in the area. And then eventually, with the pandemic that came, a lot of our services kind of took a back seat, it seemed like, for our companies. And so we're like, we can do this better. Like you said, Jeremy, we started talking to a bunch of franchises. A lot of those were restaurant franchises, but with the hours and the whole background of the restaurant industry, we decided to move towards the cleaning side of things, getting closer to that 9 to 5 work hours, a little less on the weekends and nights. And so after talking to a few other, narrowing it down to the cleaning industry, we talked to about 4 different franchisees, and really enjoyed the culture and what every other owner in the MaidPro sphere was talking about. And ended up signing the contract about 3 years ago, and it's been going good ever since. But like you said, life changed about 6 months into it, where we found out we were having our first daughter, and so priorities have changed a little bit since then. And I think I'm going to get back into the sales industry and selling this back to another great franchisee over here in East Atlanta.
Okay, lots of questions I have for you now, Zack. So walk us back to the point you're working in sales, you're in COVID. What's the pivot point for you? Do you remember the moment you were like, it's time to do something on our own?
Yep, it was definitely we were probably 3 months into it. The company did a great job paying us a base salary, because in sales, a lot of times you're 100% commission. And so I was kind of used to these bigger checks. And once even we kind of, Georgia got back on to its feet, a lot of my sales that I was making weren't going through because they didn't have the staff on the back end to either do the installs, or there was just a lot of service slipping through the cracks, and it made my name feel like it was being dragged through the Atlanta area, because I really focused on providing great services and getting referrals for a lot of my business. And then when I started to sell stuff and we weren't executing at a high performance, it was time. My wife and I like, we can do this better than, giant company like an ADT or something like that. And so that's when we kind of jumped ship and tried our own thing.
Got it. So you were already at a point with COVID where you saw a reduction in your income, and then
Exactly.
you were starting to feel some of the pain of how quickly the business could even catch up to your ability to get back to an earning place. And that was really the pivot point for you. So walk us through. So you decide, hey, we think we can own a business. What did you do at that point?
We did a lot of calling around to business owners, especially in the MaidPro world, finding out how they liked it. The good thing about their community is there's 200 MaidPro owners. We all have a chat group on Facebook, so reaching out to them was a lot of it, and then doing a competitive analysis in the area to find out what the needs looked like, and just
Zach,
showing up to my local events.
before we get into the MaidPro stuff, can we take a step back? And I'm saying at the point you decide you're going to leave ADT and you say, I need to go find a business, what did you do? How did you find businesses to look at? It sounds like you eventually narrowed it down to the cleaning industry, but walk us through the process of how you even got there.
Right. Yeah. So it was a lot of just due diligence. Like you said, getting it down to the cleaning industry was, a little further down the path, but I have a lot of connections in the restaurant industry. So with my wife working in the alcohol field, we talked to a lot of people in there, which helped us really take out the opening a restaurant or a food franchise out of the picture, which was nice to get it narrowed down. And then a lot of conversations with local business owners in the area. We started visiting the East Atlanta Business Association, just getting connected to the community, finding out what the needs were. And then once we did narrow it down to the cleaning industry, we did our competitive analysis and went around to the local areas to find out their needs and things like that. And so after we got all of our paperwork in front of us, we made a few phone calls and interviewed the franchisees. And again, MaidPro just seemed like the right fit.
Got it. So many of the first models that you looked at were restaurants because you thought, hey, this is an industry we know well. And your dive into that taught you, ooh, I'm not sure this is going to meet the needs of what we're looking for.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about when you started networking with local business owners. What things did you learn? Were there any particular meetings that were really impactful in either eliminating ideas or helping you get more clarity on what was going to work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely the most enlightening part of it was to find out everyone's different. Everyone's path is, like you said, Jeremy. And that's why you probably have this podcast is completely different. So getting perspectives from different people in different industries was very helpful to kind of narrow down what I needed to do to get this up off the ground. But yeah, most of it was good stuff about just being interacting with your community. You're the face of your business now. You're not just a sales rep trying to get a commission. You're really trying to build up your community to provide jobs, a clean, safe working environment, a culture that can really uplift. So that was a lot of parts of finding out we do need to get involved with our community a little more. We're not going to be those owners that are going to be stand back behind the scenes. We definitely really like the sound of being more involved and being part of the community.
Got it. So connect the dots for us on how you really narrowed in on the cleaning industry. Like how many different businesses had you looked at, and what was it that when you started to look at some cleaning industry things that really pulled you in?
Right. Again, it was a kind of pandemic initiated. It was looking at a different sectors over the 2 months or 3 months of due diligence and just talking with people in the community. It just seemed like an industry that wasn't going away anytime soon, and it maybe even accelerated with people's tolerance of cleanliness and having sanitized homes and things like that. So again, the opportunity I felt like was there, and also with our competitive analysis, we thought we could have a good um, advantage there with the location that we were bringing to the underserved East Atlanta side of things. So um, it was definitely a lot of digging down and finding out what was a good fit for the area because restaurants again such a niche market, and if it's not in the right spot at the right price, those don't last very long. So
Yeah, so you keep talking about this competitive analysis. So what did you do to evaluate the competition in your area and determine that this was a good opportunity?
yeah, so I mean, it's just as simple as it sounds. Is you just call those cleaning companies and would get some quotes, find out about their services, what they were offering, um, and to really focus on the top three competitors in the area. And if it was something that I could do better, and if they were also mentioned maybe they were 2 weeks out from making a booking, that was kind of a good sign for me too to know that the demand's there. And if I can come in and do it quicker, faster, and better, I think we would have had a good niche built out over here in East Atlanta.
So did you just find these companies by searching online? Where did you find the information about who the key competitors were?
Yeah, Google was the main driver behind that, but again, with the local Facebook conversation places next door, a lot of social media were very helpful. Being part of the local Facebook groups, there was a lot of people who posted in there about, "Hey, my cleaning ladies left me after 10 years. Does anyone have good suggestions?" First thing I would do is look to see who was getting suggested under there, Google them, find out about their footprint in the area. And with Google, the way it is, the ones that typically get the most traffic are the top three when you do that house cleaners near me. So that's pretty easy to find who was my competition. Um, and then moving forward from there, and then hopefully eventually knocking them out of those Facebook recommendations and seeing MaidPro up under those Facebooks.
Got it. So you picked up the phone, you called them, you did a little secret shopping. Sounds like one of the things you learned was that they were often many weeks out. And so you saw an opportunity that said, hey, if we can be quicker, if somebody has a more urgent need, there's an opportunity in the market. What else did you learn from your calls?
Yeah, and the a lot of the learning process was how expensive the house cleaning was. So again, there's a good price point there that with the right training and the right tools that MaidPro provides for us with their hands-on training and MaidPro University, it was just something that I could definitely see ourselves improving on the process and maybe even undercutting some of the pricing that we saw from those cost analysis.
Got it. And then when you had mentioned earlier that you had looked through something like 30 different opportunities, uh, was that just primarily sort of online searching, or did you get to the point where you were looking at franchise disclosure documents from a handful of these companies?
Yep, there's a few. The closest one behind the cleaning industry was a solar company that we were looking at. Their upfront costs were a little more, um, and it was still kind of at that point. We're still wondering, is solar going to be, sticking them around like it obviously is? But with this new administration, it's kind of we're still on the fence. Like, oh, maybe we did dodge a bullet. So definitely one of those that was high on the list. But being both my wife and I's background is in the service industry, we kind of went more towards the service side of things.
Got it. It sounds like you settled on cleaning because you liked the fact that it was still a relative need even during COVID. So,
Exactly.
so I mean, you figured, hey, if it can survive this, then maybe that's pretty recession proof in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So you get the franchise disclosure documents. What did you do with those? What kind of dig in did you do on the documents, calling of franchisees, building of projection models? Walk us through how you thought about evaluating the opportunity other than the competitive analysis.
Yeah. It is a big old book. I'll tell you that right now that they send you when you're signing up for a franchise. So it was definitely something I had to bring my legal, or when I say legal team, being part of a bunch of networks when I was in sales. I had a referral partner who was an attorney. So definitely getting him involved early to look that over to see if there was any things that jumped out or that they noticed, that I would need to renegotiate, which they did pick up. The territory I was buying, they had it split up into two territories, even though I just wanted it as one. So he was able to help me save about $5,000 with the verbiage that they had in their agreement, because it made it look like I was buying two territories, but even though I wanted one. So that was definitely smart to get an attorney involved when it comes to these legal documents, unless you're a graduate from Johns Hopkins or whatever from law school or something. I think definitely that's the most important thing. Just have someone you can trust on your back end to do those legal documents.
Got it. And what, if any, sort of diligence did you do in calling franchisees?
Yeah, so the good thing about the Threshold Brands, who actually owns MaidPro, is they sent me an email with every single owner's contact information on it. So started off by calling all the ones in Georgia, Smyrna, Alpharetta, out to, and actually I'm selling it to the owner now who lives in Augusta. And we got pretty much the same kind of feedback. Is it's a great company. We're more of a family here with a bunch of yearly get-togethers along with quarterly local get-togethers, and the culture and community was a real selling point, and being able to talk to people who've been doing this for 10, 15 years and seeing their success and quality of life really helped push me and my wife to make this purchase.
Got it. So you decide you're going to buy this business, and then what?
And then it kind of happened like faster than you think. You find the lease, or we lease the space, and then of course you don't want to be renting somewhere without generating profit. So are generating revenue. So we ended up getting in there and just trying to get open as fast as possible, which was nice being in the cleaning industry because we didn't really have to put much together. It was more of ordering your microfibers and your cleaning chemicals, and getting out and about and doing a lot of guerrilla marketing in the area around your office. But yeah, that was the scary part when you're writing rent checks and not having revenue to come in. So that first 3 months was a lot of groundwork and just meeting the neighbors, getting in their houses and things like that.
Yeah. How did you figure out how much it was going to cost in total to open this thing and how much money you were going to need to get it off the ground and get to profitability?
Yeah, and the good thing is that with the going the franchise route, which was the main reason we took that, was to have uh, they offer business coaches there. So having to be able to talk with the business coach before we even um, signed on a contract was something they offered really nice to kind of go through cost analysis, break even analysis, and so we were able to pull up a um, actually I look at it every day, an Excel sheet with our break even analysis on it. So we looked at that with our marketing budget and hiring costs and everything like that, and just put it into our Excel form and did our projections out. And so we did it for 5 years. And so looking at 5 years, we were going to have a good return on investment. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but with the baby and my extra expenses, it was time to call it after 3 years. But I think Rick, who's going to be taking this over, has got a real good opportunity to really take this to the next level in a good area.
Well, Zach, tell us, how closely did it align in terms of how much you thought it was going to take to get open and then what that sort of run rate of revenue and expenses was going to look like?
So definitely expenses outweighed what I thought it was going to be, mainly because of labor and the getting the right team in place, because it is a service industry. So I'm not selling a physical product. So the consistency when I send a person out to your home is got to be consistent throughout the entire process. And hiring the right people has always been the number one goal. But you can't bat 1,000, unfortunately, in this industry when you're hiring these pros. Um, so I did spend a lot of money on training and even marketing new hires to bring in. So that was the labor and getting a trainee up there was definitely a lot more expensive, and actually me being able to step out from actually cleaning houses myself or doing training in the houses to focus on building the business, that transition took a little longer than I first originally thought. So it took about an extra $30,000 in that budget of just pretty much labor that first year. So
Yeah, so it sounds like that was coming from a lot of places, meaning you're getting some client turnover because you have some inconsistency of people in the roles. You've got more turnover of maybe hiring some of the wrong people, and so you're spending a lot more time and dollars in training, where you're paying someone to learn as opposed to paying them to do. Anything else that you learned in hindsight through that initial year where you were struggling to get things stabilized?
yeah, my hindsight honestly would be what the guy who's buying my territory from me right now is doing, where he comes in after a franchise has been running for about 2 to 3 years, and then he comes in and implements his levels of management and kind of takes over someone that's already generating good sales and just cleans it up a little bit. And I think he's going to make this a very, very profitable business. And so my hindsight would have been purchasing an existing franchise that already has a base clientele with an online presence with maybe a couple pros that were already there that can train. And so you, the first year was tough. So
Yeah.
that would be my word of advice, is try to find something that's got some kind of revenue already coming in. Because when you're writing a rent check and you don't have any revenue coming in, or you're paying someone 8 hours a day and you only have 3 hours of cleaning for them, that was the toughest part for sure.
That's interesting, Zach, because I think a lot of people go down the franchise path because they're worried about the learning curve of starting something on their own.
Right.
And so you're walking into a set of operations and some support there. I think what I'm hearing from you is, yeah, but even when you're doing that, if you're launching a new franchise, there's still a pretty steep learning curve that is probably going to be more expensive than you're expecting, as opposed to if you get in with an existing business, you kind of already have a base to work from where you get to avoid, some of those hard lessons maybe.
Exactly. Yep. That's always, anytime someone says, "Oh, I want to start a business," and I would probably look into maybe buying a business in the future than actually starting from scratch. Is definitely probably the path my wife and I will take down the line, once we get, maybe the baby a little older.
Got it. So it sounds like for you, it's time to let go of the business because you need to be in a place where you're making more money right now with the time that you have to invest. But that is there something about owning a business that you want to come back to at some point in the future? Like, help me walk through the logic of where your head's at right now, having been at this for 3 years, and how you're thinking about the future.
Yeah, exactly. It's just right now, my wife is obviously the breadwinner, and we're not writing too huge checks from this industry, and it's a lot on her to pay for, because we're still paying for daycare, childcare, and that's another mortgage check right there. So it was tough coming from a two income family where we were both in that 6 figure making range, to lose half that, and then have the extra expenses of the childcare that comes around to it. And we've been, it's been a struggle for 3 years to have half the income, and then of our expenses almost double as well. So if I didn't have extra expenses and my wife made a bunch of money, I would be doing this until the end, until hopefully I would sell it as part of a retirement. But being in late 30s, trying to get into eventually to retire one day or invest in another business, I think right now is the time to get into that sales, make as much money as I can, and eventually maybe get back into that ownership. Because it has been nice to have the flexibility. If my daughter was sick or something, I could usually stay home and run the business pretty remotely in the mornings. But we'll miss that aspect of it. But yeah, the fear of every month of having to come up with babies, daycare and rent and our mortgage and things like that was a lot to handle for over the past 3 years.
Yeah, kids definitely change the dynamic for sure. Um, Sounds like there's some things about the flexibility that you like. So it sounds like you're enjoying business ownership, but maybe it's not creating the kind of dividends that really make it worth your time right now.
Exactly. And it all comes down to money, because I really enjoy creating a culture where people enjoy coming to work. I feel like I have 9 pros on my team, and everyone feels valued. And it's not an easy job. I always tell the pros this, but if you can come in and have a good time, laugh, listen to music, whatever it is that gets you happy, motivated through the day, that's the culture I wanted to create. And I believe we did that. That's the thing I'll be missing the most is um the pros that have stuck with me through the ups and downs. Especially I have one that's been with me since day one, and a few other ladies that have been with me for a year plus. So that's pretty good in this industry if you can keep the pros around that long. So like I said, it's the culture was my favorite thing that we've created here. Even a lot of my pros will come in on their time off to just eat in the office and hang out and shoot the crap or whatever it is. So um, that's going to be tough to leave.
Yeah, to walk away from that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Zach. You've been at this for 3 years. You say at some point you might like to go back and be a business owner. What have you learned? What would you do differently, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if you're coming back to business ownership?
Yeah, other than the buying an established business that maybe is just kind of at my point where it's generating revenue, but not putting a lot to that bottom line. That would be the opportunity. But another thing I earned is when I was hiring at the beginning, I was hiring pretty much anyone who had a pulse and throwing mud against the wall and just seeing what stuck is not the best way, because that's where I spent a lot of my money. Was just, you came in and we're breathing. I would spend almost $1,200 to get through training, a lot of times for 5 days of training to make sure you're trustworthy and good to go out to someone's house, and then losing somebody after you do that $1,200 investment for training is kind of tough. So I should have just done what maybe a lot of these competitors are doing, where I'm just not saying, hey, I can be out there the next day. Just get my staffing was with the right people would have been more important than just being out there the next day with a person that maybe wasn't the best fit for my business.
Got it. So it sounds like you felt such pressure and urgency to drive the revenue that you just started taking anyone that would come in the door and trying to get them out. When did that change for you? And what changed about your process of how you were recruiting that led to
Yeah,
better
it was
results?
probably that first year. It was just anyone who would come in for an interview was basically getting a job. And after I hired this lady Latoya, who came from a previous or moved here from Ohio and came down, and she kind of helped me with the training process and said, Zach, you need to not just hire anybody. They need to have a little bit of experience and a little bit of coachability before you're just bringing these people in. And so having a head trainer was a big thing that actually, she's like, hey, Zach, you need higher quality. I knew that, but it needed someone else in there to say, hey, this person's not going to work. You need to cut your losses. And it even on the customer end, I was probably getting some customers that I would just negotiate the price just to get us in the door. And a lot of times those wouldn't be the right fit for us or the right customers. And so being a little bit more choosy after that first year, once we got some good revenues in, I could make those little decisions a little easier.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you're making, Zach, because I think one of the things that can happen with people when they first start a business is there's this incredible pressure to perform. And it sounds like in your case, what you're saying is it caused me to take on customers I knew I shouldn't be taking on because they're negotiating price with me before we've ever met, right? Below what makes your business run. And
Exactly.
that puts you in a place where you were also feeling the urgency to just hire whomever. I'm curious, what changed about your recruiting process? Did she just take you out of the recruiting process? Were you the problem? Or did something change fundamentally about how the process worked where you started asking different questions or doing different things to make sure you got the right people?
Yeah, I mean, it all started with getting the core three I was telling you about. The guy that was with me since day one, and my two other ladies that have been with me for about almost 2 years now. So when I got the core group there, that's when I could be a little more picky and choosy. I was still doing all my interviews, the first interview, and if they made it past me, I would set them up with Latoya, who would I would just want her busting. I was like, hey, you're the person that's going to be training this person now, so you kind of give me your feedback and things like that. So it was nice to be able to have someone that actually worked in the industry and had a management position in Ohio, that she could kind of give me a little under the hood look at these people and give me a little more feedback. Because I would just see someone walk in like, oh, they do have a month of cleaning experience, but they have no idea what they're doing. And so it was nice to have that extra little support in there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sounds like the biggest thing though was just when you had a few people, it took some of that pressure off, and so you didn't force the decisions as much, and you relied on some other perspectives of people maybe who were better informed than you about how they might do in the job.
Exactly. Yep. That's 100% right.
Got it. All right. Well, Zach, any other big pieces of wisdom that have come for you in this 3 year journey of trying business ownership on?
Yeah. To find a mentor, like I said, I couldn't imagine doing this without my business coach. I know um, that was the big thing about a franchise. Going into a franchise is having someone you could bounce ideas off of to kind of coach you through the process. Look at if you're a lot of business owners don't have a CPA, don't have a marketing degree and things like that. So you have to have pieces around you that make life easier. And so I would definitely make sure if you are looking into an industry and maybe you are good at an operations guy, which I always consider myself a good operations with the team and people like that, but I have no idea how to market. So making sure you get a good marketing team or an attorney that sends over, like I get, papers all the time from legal people, and having a guy that can help you with that. The people who you surround you with are most important, I would say.
Yeah. Did you struggle with dialing in the marketing, or did the franchisor kind of have that dialed in for you to start?
Yeah, they had that dialed in. So I have a marketing coach as well who have broken down the PPC, SEO, things like that, GLS, and we review every month of our performance online. A lot of it's with Google, but again, coming up with ideas of guerrilla marketing and things like that was a huge help every month. And I've finally gotten better at it to where I'm not having to call them every 2 weeks to be like, oh, what should I do here?
Got it. Well, Zack, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I think the most valuable lesson I've heard from you is one I've seen before with some other business owners, but I think the way your story is played out really highlights it is if you create so much pressure to perform right out of the gates, like that can hamper your ability to make great decisions about the right people to hire, the right customers to bring on. Um, and I think it says a lot about why you're now saying, okay, I've got a daughter on the way, so I gotta button things up for a little while here before I come back to finding my next path forward. I will share with you, I did interview one of our clients a couple months ago. It was a guy who had failed at two startups, and then he had a multi-unit franchise that he launched that died during COVID. And then he came back and bought an existing business that has been growing like gangbusters. So, you know, you never know what the path is going to hold for you.
Yep, that's a similar sentiment that my sister tells me. She's always worked for startups, and she's all the nerds, the tech nerds or whatever that she talks about is most of them are on their fourth or fifth startup until they get it right, and they always call them or learning opportunities, a failed business at that time, And so, yeah, I've had three learning opportunities up until we got her new company is called Tixer, and they're killing it right now. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Zack, again, I really appreciate your time. Super grateful for you sharing your story and being willing to be vulnerable and open about it. It's a great opportunity for other people to learn from. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Jeremy.
All right, Zack. Well, that concludes the recorded portion. So, any questions for me? Any feedback you have about Guyton or anything I can help with?
Not at all. It was fun. Again, anytime I can share my personal experience with a business owner, because it's scary, it's a lot of work, and it's a big risk. And if I can help anybody maybe succeed with one business, it would be 100% worth it.
Awesome. Anything you want to share with me about Guyton or anything I can help you with? Sounds like you're about to sell the business. Do you have all you need support from our team as you go through that process?
Yeah, they've been great. I forgot who I spoke with last time, and she's like, "Yeah, just whenever you guys are getting a little closer to the end, get us the paperwork and we can close you all out." Or she gave me like 3 path forwards, so we're going to be talking about those at the end of the month, I guess.
Great. Okay, man. Well, if that's all, then I'll let you get back to it. I'm sure you got a lot to do, but again, super grateful for your time.
Absolutely. And this podcast, is it? Where do you hear it?
So you can see it on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. I mean, it's all the normal places that you would look for a podcast. And I can have May reach out to you whenever we finalize what date your episode would launch.
What's the name of the podcast?
Create the life you want.
Perfect. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, Zack, have a fantastic